Starting next month, you'll pay rent if you want to stay here. Maybe it'll teach you some respect. The words sliced through me like glass under skin. Respect. As if the late nights editing video weren't proof enough. Respect. As if chasing dreams was laziness. Respect as if love came with an invoice. My throat burned but my face stayed still. My silence was louder than their voices. Hi everyone, my name is Serafino Lane. I'm 24 and I've built a fragile empire out of borrowed laptops, coffee shop Wi-Fi, and the kind of determination you can't measure in paychecks. I design campaigns, I stitch memories into films, and I chase a vision no one else dares to see. To them though, I'm just a shadow in their house. Cost. A burden. A dead weight. Last week Mom sneered, "When will you finally grow up?" Dad smirked over his glass. Dreamers don't pay the bills. But silence sharpens. And I'd been sharpening for months. That night I unzipped my duffel with the precision of a surgeon. Hoodies folded like armor. My camera, my hard drives, tucked like treasure in a chest. Grand's denim jacket, threadbare but brave, rested on top. Each item was a heartbeat. Each sip a declaration. I'm leaving before they can make me crawl. Mom's shadow lingered in the doorway. Don't be dramatic. I'm not, I whispered. I'm being exact. Dad's voice rolled down the hallway. Shut that door by midnight. I always meet my deadlines, I answered without looking back. I laid my house key on the dresser. It gleamed under lamplight like a coin left on a grave. On the porch, the night smelled of damp earth and unfinished stories. The street hummed low like it had been waiting for me to choose myself. Behind me, the house sighed, walls swollen with contempt, pretending not to care. Ahead, the dark stretched endless, uncharted, alive. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Because dead weight doesn't stay behind. It walks forward. Into the storm. The rain began just as I reached the corner. Not a heavy downpour, just thin silver needles pricking my skin, as if the night wanted to baptize me before I crossed into something new. My duffel grew heavier with every block, straps digging into my shoulder, but my steps never faltered. I didn't know exactly where I was going, just away. Away from the sneers. Away from the dinners where silence was louder than laughter. Away from the walls that pressed closer each time I breathed. The bus stop at Pine and Alder glowed under a flickering street lamp. A man in a soaked trench coat muttered to himself on the bench, tapping a rhythm against his thigh. I stood a few feet away, clutching my bag, heart pounding like I'd committed a crime. Maybe in their eyes I had. Leaving before being shoved out. Refusing to shrink. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Mom. Don't be stupid. You'll come back when you realize you can't survive alone. I stared at the screen, water dripping from my lashes, and for a split second, doubt coiled through me. Could I survive? Rent, groceries, bills. Adult storms waiting to swallow me whole. But then I remembered the way Dad's fork clinked against his plate when he called me useless. I remembered the way Mom laughed when I said I'd landed a client. Doubt evaporated like steam. The bus arrived with a wheeze, doors groaning open. Warm air spilled out, smelling faintly of oil and old carpet. I climbed aboard, dropped a few crumpled bills into the machine and slid into a seat near the back. My reflection stared back at me in the rain-streaked window, pale, damp but lit with something fierce. As the city blurred past, I pulled out my notebook, the one with invoices stapled inside, and flipped to a blank page. My pen scratched across it. This is not the end. This is the proof. Behind me the city exhaled. Ahead of me a map unwritten. And in that fragile silence between departure and arrival, I made myself a promise. I would never again beg for respect from people who couldn't see my worth. The night bus carried me forward, humming like a secret ally. The bus rumbled deeper into the city, its engine groaning like an old animal, each stop spilling out strangers into the wet night. I clutched my duffel tighter, the fabric warm against my chest, as though holding it could steady the storm inside me. By the time we pulled into the downtown terminal, the rain had thickened into sheets, hammering the pavement. I stepped off, shoes splashing, neon lights bleeding into puddles like watercolor. The air smelled of fried food and diesel, a messy chorus of survival. I had no apartment, no friend's couch waiting, no neat plan folded in my pocket. Just a list of small clients and the grit in my bones. I found a diner glowing with a flickering "Open 24 hours" sign and slipped inside. The bell above the door gave me away, but no one cared. The place buzzed with tired truckers and college kids hunched over greasy plates. I slid into a corner booth, pulled out my laptop and tethered my phone. The Wi-Fi was slow, but it worked. The screen glowed against the tiredness in my face as I opened unpaid invoices, replying to clients, pretending like this was just another night of hustling. But the truth pressed hard. I was homeless. At least for tonight. A waitress with tired eyes set down a cup of coffee. "On the house," she said, glancing at my soaked jacket. "You look like you need it." "Thank you," I whispered, wrapping my hands around the mug like it was the only warm thing in the world. My phone buzzed again. "Dad, this time, so you think you're independent? Don't come crawling back when you fail." The words should have shattered me. Instead, they burned clean through the doubt. Failure wasn't leaving. It was staying where respect never existed. I stared at the rain trickling down the diner window and felt something inside shift. This wasn't exile. This was escape. And I knew deep in my chest the life I was about to build would not just prove them wrong, it would make them regret ever calling me dead weight. The storm outside wasn't breaking me. It was baptizing me. I stayed in that diner until the sky softened from black to gray, the storm finally breaking into a tired drizzle. The waitress gave me a refill and a smile that didn't ask for anything in return. I tucked her kindness into my chest like a secret I'd need later. With dawn came decisions. My account balance was thin, just enough for a cheap motel, maybe 2 weeks if I stretched every dollar. Instead, I chose to save it. Every cent mattered. I slung my duffel over my shoulder and walked to the nearest co-working space I'd once researched but never dared enter. The glass doors opened onto a hum of clicking keyboards and murmured ambition. My shoes squeaked on the polished floor as I handed over my last $20 for a day pass. The receptionist didn't care that my hair was damp or that my jacket smelled faintly of rain. To her, I was just another freelancer carving out hours in the city. I claimed a corner desk, opened my laptop and dove into work with a hunger sharper than fear. Emails flew out like arrows. Pitches, proposals, follow-ups I'd been too timid to send before. By noon, I'd landed 2 small editing projects and a tentative contract for a local boutique campaign. My heart hammered. Survival wasn't a vague dream anymore. It had receipts. But the ache of betrayal lingered under each keystroke. Mom's laughter when I mentioned my clients. Dad's snort when I shared my goals. Their voices chased me, whispering that I was nothing more than a runaway with Wi-Fi. At 3, my phone lit up with a call. I let it ring until the screen went dark. 10 minutes later, a message arrived. "Your room better not be empty. Where are you?" For the first time, I didn't answer. The silence was mine to keep. I looked around at the strangers grinding beside me, designers, coders, writers, and realized something. These people weren't mocking me. They weren't measuring me against a standard I never asked for. They were just building. And maybe, just maybe, I belonged more here in this rented corner than I ever did in that house I once called home. The hum of keyboards became my new soundtrack. I lost myself in it hour after hour, the glow of my laptop casting light on a version of me I'd only glimpsed in daydreams, focused, free, unafraid. By evening, exhaustion crept in, but it was laced with something fierce: progress. I packed up and stepped into the night air. The drizzle had stopped. The streets shone slick with reflected neon. My duffel felt lighter not because it was, but because I finally knew why I carried it. The motel I found was nothing special, peeling paint, buzzing sign, but it was mine for the night. 4 walls, a door that locked, and silence no one could twist into shame. I set my things down and collapsed onto the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was clean. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Messages stacked one after another. "Mom again. Why didn't you tell us you were leaving?" "Dad, this is ridiculous. You'll regret it." And finally, "Come home before you embarrass yourself further." Embarrass myself. That phrase curled like smoke in my lungs. What they never understood was that I'd been embarrassed for years. Sitting at their table, swallowing their ridicule, letting their definitions of success choke me. Leaving wasn't embarrassment. It was defiance. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote down every client I had, every payment due, every possibility. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof I was building something brick by brick, even if those bricks were digital files and late-night invoices. The motel clock ticked softly, marking each second I stayed gone. Each second I didn't cave. And as I drifted into sleep, a thought anchored me. One day they would call again, not with threats, not with scorn, but with fear. Fear of being left behind by the dead weight, who learned how to rise. That night I dreamed not of home but of freedom. And when I woke, the dream didn't fade. Morning light slipped through the thin motel curtains, pale and restless. I sat up, muscles stiff, duffel still at my feet like a loyal guard. The air smelled faintly of dust and bleach, but to me it smelled like independence. I brewed a cup from the battered coffee maker in the corner, sipping slowly while scrolling through my inbox. 2 of my proposals had been accepted overnight. Small projects, yes, but paid. Enough to stretch another week, maybe 2 if I played it right. I dressed quickly, pulled Grand's denim jacket tight and headed back downtown. The co-working space welcomed me again with its quiet electricity, rows of strangers moving like currents toward their own futures. I slid into the same corner desk, fingers flying across the keys. Work flowed like water. I wasn't surviving, I was carving. But mid-afternoon my phone lit up again. Mom, this time not with anger but with something softer. Where are you? Just talk to us. A second message followed. We didn't mean it like that. I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady. The words felt wrong, too polished, like they were stitched together to hide the real seams. My parents never apologized. Not when I was 12 and skipped meals so they wouldn't scold me about being ungrateful. Not when they tore into me for choosing art over accounting. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my phone and kept typing, pouring myself into the project until the sun began its slow descent. Walking back to the motel, I noticed something strange. My chest felt lighter. Their voices, the constant criticism, the weight of their disappointment, were quieter now, like echoes down a long hallway. I was no longer standing in their house where every insult landed like a hammer. I was here outside, building brick by digital brick. Back in my room, I made a vow, whispering it into the stillness. I'll never let them measure me again. One day they'll measure themselves against me. The clock ticked, steady like a heartbeat not my own. And for the first time I smiled at the silence. The breakthrough came a week later. I was sitting at that same corner desk, sipping burnt coffee, when an email popped up with a subject line that made my breath hitch. Partnership proposal. A mid-sized marketing firm had seen one of my campaigns floating online. They wanted me not as a freelancer but as a contracted creative. The pay wasn't millionaire money, but it was steady, professional, and triple what my parents ever believed I could make. I pressed my hands over my mouth, shaking, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. This wasn't luck. This was work. My work. I signed the contract that afternoon, my fingers trembling, heart thundering as if the universe had finally whispered, "See? You were right to leave." That evening my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 10 missed calls from Mom. 5 from Dad. Finally, one message appeared that froze me. "We came home and your room is empty. What are you doing? Where are you?" I read it again and again, a strange mix of anger and satisfaction rising in me. Empty. Yes. Empty because I had filled my life somewhere else. Empty because I'd stopped decorating their house with my patience. The next morning, another message. "Please come home. We can figure this out." And just like that, the panic set in, not mine, theirs. The power had shifted. I wasn't the child begging for scraps of validation. They were the ones begging now, realizing their control had slipped through their fingers. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured every ounce of myself into my first big project, staying up past midnight in the motel room, light flickering over my notes and edits. The hum of the old fridge kept me company, a steadier rhythm than their voices ever had. As I hit send on the final file, I whispered into the dim room, "Dead weight doesn't rise." But I did. And somewhere deep inside, I knew part 8 was coming. The moment when they would have to see me not as the failure they mocked, but as the proof of what happens when you walk away. 2 weeks later, the contract money hit my account. Not much by the world's standards, but more than enough to upgrade from the motel into a small studio with cracked brick walls and sunlight pouring through wide windows. It was mine. Every inch of it whispered freedom. I hung Grand's denim jacket by the door like a flag. My desk faced the window where the city hummed like an orchestra, every note proof I had chosen right. I worked late into the nights and for once the exhaustion felt like triumph. Then came the call I had been waiting for, not from a client but from my parents. I let it ring, then pressed answer. "Serafina, Mom's voice wavered, using my name like it was fragile. We didn't know you were serious. You've made your point. Come home. You don't have to do this alone. Dad's voice cut in, firmer but cracked at the edges. You're our daughter. This is ridiculous. Stop punishing us. I stared at the sunlight spilling across my desk, warm and golden. My voice was calm, steady. I'm not punishing you. I'm building me. And you never wanted to see it until now. Silence crackled across the line, broken only by Mom's shallow breath. We were worried, she offered weakly. You mocked me. You called me dead weight. My voice didn't shake. But look around. My room is empty because I filled my own life. And I won't shrink back to fit inside yours again. For once they had no reply. Just silence. The same silence they had forced on me at countless dinners, now turned against them. I ended the call. Not in anger. Not in spite. In peace. I turned back to my desk, the glow of my laptop waiting, projects unfolding, opportunities multiplying. The city outside pulsed with endless rhythm and I breathed it in. Respect, I realized, is never given by those who don't know how to value it. It's carved. Turned. It's carried out the door and built brick by brick until it towers higher than their ceilings ever reached. And mine had just begun.